We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Men's Tennis Through the Decades. Tonight we have a special one in store for you. We've got men's alums from the 50s and the 60s joining head coach Bruce Myers and one of our current student athletes, a freshman all the way from Toronto, Canada, Tim Zelikovsky. So Tim, we thank you for joining us as well. My name is Todd Newcomb, and I want to thank Geisinger as our sponsor for this event. Geisinger has done a great job throughout the pandemic. And as always, they do a great job taking care of our student athletes on a day in, day out basis. So thank you to Geisinger. Let me get right to it and introduce tonight's guest, and then I'll turn it over to Coach. So our first guest from the class of 1953, Maurice Mufson. Maurice was a 3-year letter winner for the men's tennis program. And while he was there, his teams won 24 varsity matches over the 3 years that he played. Our next guest from the class of 1967 is Jay Pekar. He went 27-10 in singles competition and 23-8 in doubles during his Bucknell career. And 53 years after graduation, he still ranks 47th on the all-time list with his 50 overall wins. Our next guest from the class of 1969 is David Gordon. He was the team captain during both the 1967-68 and 68-69 seasons. David won 32 total matches, 19 in singles and 13 in doubles. And our next guest is also from that very same year, the year of 1969. That's Sam Ross. Sam was a 3-year letter winner. He went 26-8 in singles competition and 14-7 in doubles during his Bucknell career. He posted an overall record of 40-15, winning 73% of his matches. So, Coach, we've got a great group. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd. And thanks, guys, for being here. You guys are amongst one of my favorite groups, favorite eras. I hear from Maurice quite often. I hear from Jay all the time, and Sam and David. So you guys do a great job of staying in touch, and that's appreciated. I'm actually very much looking forward to this and getting some memories from you guys, especially with my freshman Tim from his parents are actually from Ukraine, but he's Canadian, so I'm really looking forward to this. But to kind of get the things kicked off, I want to kind of go around. If you can just give me a little bit of life after Bucknell, where you live, what you're doing, what you've done, married, kids, grandkids. So I'll start and we'll go to Maurice first. And I know what you've been doing and still do, but can you tell everybody what you're doing?
Yes, I can. So I'm Professor Emeritus in the Department of Medicine at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. And I moved there in 1976 to become the founding chair of the Department of Medicine of a brand new school at Marshall. And originally, my wife and I thought, well, we will be there 5, 6, or 7 years and then see what else is available. As it turned out, we've been there ever since, almost 45 years. And in 2002, I became emeritus, and I am still working for the practice group, mainly doing research. I do research on vaccines and pneumococcal disease and respiratory syncytial virus. And I do mentor and present lectures during the year. So before I came to Marshall, I was at the University of Illinois College of Medicine in Chicago. I started as assistant professor and rose to the rank of professor over 12 years' time. And before that, I was at the National Institutes of Health. And I served 2 years in the Navy before coming to the National Institutes of Health. While I was at Marshall, I had a sabbatical leave at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, where I did studies on respiratory syncytial virus, which is a major cause of respiratory illness in children, mainly children under a year of age. And we discovered that, in fact, respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, sorted itself out into 2 groups, Group A and Group B, A more common than B. And the most important finding was that the difference between these 2 groups of viruses was in 5 amino acids in one gene of the virus, an amazingly specific way of separating out the two. And recently, I was the keynote speaker at the 2020 graduation of the School of Medicine, and the university awarded me an honorary Doctor of Science this year.
Maurice, that's outstanding. Thanks for being here. Next to Jay. William J. Picard, how are you? What have you been up to? Well, you're down in Stewart, but life after Bucknell for you. How did it take shape?
Hello, Coach and everybody. Well, let's see. After Bucknell, I went into the Army, and when I got out, I went to study accounting and got a Bachelor of Science in Accounting at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Went on to work with a Big 8 firm in New York City for 5 years. And then I worked with several multinational corporations as an internal auditor, traveling around the world. And let's see, I finally settled down when I took a job, having moved down to Florida. I took a job with the Wackenut Corporation, and I met my wife, who had come in from the Virgin Islands after Hurricane Hugo, or actually before Hurricane Hugo, but chose to stay with me in West Palm Beach. And we subsequently got married, have a daughter, Amanda, who's now 30, living in Washington, D.C. And we've moved around quite a bit. But ultimately, right now, we're in Melbourne, Florida, dodging hurricanes and living in a house we had built about a year ago in a 55 and over active adult community. It does have one tennis court. It's in serious need of resurfacing. But as chairman of the finance committee, I hope to get some funds to do that.
Great. Thanks so much, Jay. Next, we'll move up to Sam. Sam, what's life after Bucknell look like for you?
Well, after Bucknell, I went to law school, and then I got a graduate law degree in taxation at NYU. And I become a real estate attorney. I'm semi-retired. I'm with a firm, a 100th lawyer firm. I represent major real estate people. I have my wife, Judy, is right. My IT person is right next to me because I don't know what I'm doing with this. And I have 2 twin sons and 4 grandkids. And one of my grandsons is a producer of CBS Sports, and he does the football games, the NFL games. And the other one is in entertainment in Hollywood. And everything is good. I'm just trying to be safe. And that's what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. And then the captain, David Gordon. What have you been up to life after Bucknell?
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. After Bucknell, I spent 4 years in Maryland teaching school and teaching tennis. And then I segued into the business world, taking a job with my late wife's stepfather in Florida. Lived in Miami for 4 years, Atlanta for 11, and then from 88 to 2009, I lived out in California and Tucson. 2009, I came back here to the east because of family. I live in Holyoke, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Springfield. For the most part, I've been in the sales world, everything from single contributor, regional sales manager for Fortune 500 companies, and sales manager for a small education company. Right now, I'm selling print and digital media as a day job. I also help my now significant other who invented or developed a therapy that resolves PTSD and other things in helping her spread her practice. Got 2 kids. Son lives in California, a couple of grandkids out there, and daughter here back east, and there's a grandson there. Still run around the court reasonably well.
Very nice.
The guys I play with, not this past season, of course, there was no season this year, but 2 years ago, we won the New England 65s and played in the Nationals out in Surprise, Arizona.
Arizona, there you go. Awesome. Outstanding. So we'll go back around, and I know recruiting obviously nowadays is probably much different than it was in your day. So give me a little story of how you ended up at Bucknell. What was the process like? So we'll go back to Maurice and tell me how you ended up at Bucknell.
I just want to fill in that my wife is a psychologist, and we're still happily married after 57 years. We have 3 kids. Our son, the oldest, he's in finance. One daughter is an accountant at Siemens, and the other daughter is a career creative in advertising. We have 5 grandkids.
Wow.
So I found Bucknell through friends of my family, both of whom were teachers at the New York City high schools. And we met with them, and they showed me a bunch of catalogs and thought that Bucknell was a wonderful place, and I should give serious thought to going to Bucknell. I sent in my application, and I wrote the coach, Hank Peters, and he invited me out to Bucknell. I took the train from Pennsylvania Station. It was a coal-fired engine, changed trains at Harrisburg, and he met me at Milton. And I saw the campus for a weekend, and it looked great. And he offered me a spot on the team, and I accepted. And so that following September, I started on the team at Bucknell. I really loved Bucknell. I was a pre-med major, and I was the only one who missed a number of practices because I had labs. Everybody else did not have labs. At that time, people who were in accounting, it was called Commerce and Finance, or CNF, and almost the whole team were those kinds of majors. So, but it was a wonderful experience, and I thought Bucknell was one of the best universities, small universities one could go to, and really enjoyed it.
Awesome. That's outstanding. Thanks, Maurice. Jay, how did you end up at Bucknell University?
Well, I was coached by Charlie Lundgren at the Maplewood Country Club while I was, a junior and in the boys Eastern Circuit. And he knew Hank Peters, who was at the Canoe Country Club. So I got to know Hank through tennis, local tennis. And Charlie was the placement director and also the tennis coach at Uppsala College in East Orange, New Jersey. And Hank, of course, was the coach at Bucknell. I applied to both schools. I got into Uppsala right away. I got a notice from Fitz Walling that I was on the waiting list at Bucknell. So my father called Hank, and the next day I got a letter that I was accepted. So I had visited Bucknell with the Uppsala team when they played before I enrolled as a freshman. So I was familiar with the campus. I had met a lot of the fellows on the team who would be there when I was playing, or there as a freshman at least. So I was familiar with the campus and the players, and it was pretty easy to decide to attend.
And correct me if I'm wrong about this story, but we always host our alumni paddle event at Canoe Country Club. And isn't that where you got the call, or something happened at Canoe whether you got the call that you got in from Hank? I think you told me that.
No, actually, I was playing in the Eastern Clay Court Championships at the Oritani Field Club when I got a call from Martha Henderson, who was in the administration. She was pretty high up. And she said, well, some of the courses that you selected are closed. And I want you to consider taking Psychology 101 and Political Science 101. The courses that I had signed up for, like organic chemistry and some other tough courses. So she obviously was trying to steer me in the right direction. I said, sure. So actually, when I graduated in '67, she was retiring, and she got a standing ovation from our class when that was announced on the stage. So she saved the day for me.
That's outstanding. Sam Ross, how did we end up at Bucknell University?
All right, you want the truth, right?
Absolutely. Your wife's there, right?
Okay.
She can fact check.
I applied to Yale as a reach, and the tennis coach at Penn told me, unless there's some crazy thing, you're getting into Penn. Well, 5 guys from my school whose parents and grandparents all got into Penn, got in. I didn't. And all right, there's Bucknell, which I knew from family members. And so I went to Bucknell. The first time I ever saw the campus was when I drove up there the day before we were allowed to get into the campus. And I went there, and it it was the perfect place for me. I mean, I really belonged there. And so that's how I went. And freshmen weren't allowed to play tennis
Right.
at that time. And I went out for the tennis team, and there were a lot of guys who were trying out for the team who were very good, but there were only a few of us, who made it. And then when we, went to our sophomore year, as Dave knows, we had Hank Peters as our coach, who was just a remarkable, crazy person. And I mean, I can go on later on about my experiences with Hank and everything, but that's how I got to Bucknell, and it turned out it was really the best thing for me.
Worked out well for you, huh?
Yeah.
Great. That's awesome. David Gordon, how did you end up at Bucknell?
Well, I was a so-so high school player. I kind of wanted to play college tennis, but I really didn't think I had it in me. And back then we weren't as sophisticated about choosing colleges. So I applied to a bunch of places, just with odd majors here and there. My best friend in high school, Jay Hirsch, wanted to go to Bucknell. And it ended up that 3 of us from Mount Vernon, New York, ended up there. Jay, myself, and Gil Holmes. Those 2 were on the swim team. They wanted to room together. Bucknell wrote them a letter and said, we won't allow kids from the same town to room together. And then they put Gil and I together, and we lived together for 3 years. So I went because Jay was going. And it turns out that the summer after I graduated high school, my game made a quantum leap, and I became good enough to play. I don't think I was the best freshman. Sam, there was another guy from Long Island who had gone to a Friends Academy, who I think was better than I was, but he flunked out.
Yes,
And,
Jack. I'll tell you the story. Jack Butel. He was my one loss senior year in high school.
yes,
Jack Butel from Friends. I schlepped out to Friends Academy, and when I first got there, I went looking for him. I couldn't find him. I think he flunked out after before the first semester ended.
Yeah, he didn't hang around. Jay talks about organic chemistry. I started as a chemistry major. Bad decision. Thought I'd be pre-med. I'm probably the only person that you're going to ever encounter who had a 0.8 first semester sophomore year. Jay's laughing because he was the person I went to vent to when I was going through all this aggravated academia. My advisor was my organic chemistry major at the time. No, inorganic. Charles Rudy was a young guy, and all he would say to me was, I've never been in the Army, but maybe it's a good thing for you. No advice on, drop the courses. While failing, you'll make them up again. And I did graduate with a reasonable GPA. But again, I'd hoped to play college tennis. I chose Bucknell because Jay was going, and I ended up not only playing tennis, but meeting my bride.
There you go. That's outstanding. Great. So we'll go back around. So if you can narrow it down to 1, maybe 1.5, what was your most memorable experience at Bucknell as a part of the men's tennis program? We'll go back to Maurice.
Well, even though I grew up in New York City, I hadn't traveled very much outside of the city. And Bucknell on the tennis team meant we traveled by 2 cars to lots of the small cities where colleges or universities were located in Pennsylvania, on to Washington, D.C. We played at Annapolis and a number of other places. And it was that travel that was really very much exciting. We had a collegial group of guys and we all got along really quite well. So that's what I enjoyed most.
Have you stayed in touch with any of the old guys, for the old teammates?
No.
Okay.
When you graduate in 53 and you're still around in 2020, not many of your friends are around. I find many more of my classmates from medical school, I went to New York University School of Medicine in Manhattan, many more of my class are still around.
Wow.
About half of us are still around. Our class out of 128.
That's great. That's
So
great.
I didn't keep up with any of the tennis players.
Gotcha. Jay, you've told me so many good stories over the years, but pick a favorite, one of your most memorable times as a Bucknell student athlete.
Well, I think the most memorable matches for me were at Swarthmore. We played them for the MAC championship, and I lost to a fellow named Jim Predmore, and it was a pretty good match. And the timing of it was such that we had a week of exams and sitting around. So by the time it came to play the match, I really hadn't been practicing very much, and I wasn't on top of my game, but it was still enjoyable. And we also played indoors at Swarthmore in the prior year, perhaps, and I lost to Predmore again.
Okay.
On the wood. But Ed Faulkner, the U.S. Davis Cup coach, was their coach, and he was pretty laid back. I knew of him, but I didn't really approach him or speak to him at all. I wish I had, in retrospect.
Wow, that's great. Outstanding. Sam Ross, give me your most memorable time as a student athlete at Bucknell.
Well, before we all came on, I was talking to Dave and to Jay, and we were talking about our North Carolina, our Southern tour, when Dave and I were juniors, right, Dave?
Yes.
And, we went to, we go to North Carolina, and we were playing all these guys, and I mentioned this before. And I think, going to the different colleges was great for me. But when I think about the funniest, most memorable thing was, we also, our Dave and our team, we were pretty good, and we had a very, very good record. And we're playing all the big schools, but then we won the MAC, and we're playing Swarthmore again in the finals. We won the North, and they won the South. And I had hurt my forearm, and I'm left-handed. And Hank Peters, who was the nuttiest guy going, I mean, he was really insane. He used to come into my fraternity to make sure I was up from matches. He would wake me up, and anyhow, so my forearm was hurting, and he tapes my forearm before the match, and he says to me, now this is the finals, this is the championship match, and he says to me, Sam, when you're warming up with your opponent, play right-handed. I'm lefty. Okay. True story. I said, okay. So there I am. I'm playing in the warm-ups against this guy, right-handed. And this guy is looking at me like going, what the hell? How is this guy playing? And then when the the match ended, not the match ended, but when the match started, I switched to my left hand and I blew the guy out. I don't, yeah, but to me, that was the most memorable thing where Hank Peters said to me, just play right-handed warming up. I mean, so that was really a very funny experience.
I mean, if it worked, maybe I should use it with Tim at some point in the spring.
Yeah, Tim, you should you should use it. But Hank, this is Tim. This is before, for up until my senior year, everybody played wooden rackets. Hank gave me the Jimmy Connors T2000 metal racket.
T2000, yep.
And that's when I switched from wood to for my senior year. But he was nuts. I didn't know that he actually knew tennis. I mean, but yeah, he was great. He was a wonderful guy.
That's outstanding. Thanks so much, Sam. And David, what was
Well,
give me
I'm
one
gonna
experience?
briefly touch the trip to North Carolina was wonderful. Also upsetting Swarthmore in the finals in Ed Faulkner's last match was very gratifying. But I'm going to tell a story. Junior year, I'm, of course, captain as a junior, and I'm number one. And Hubert Humphrey, the vice president, comes to deliver the commencement address at Bucknell. And he brings along the Undersecretary of the Navy, a gentleman by the name of Charles Bard, along with him. And Mr. Bard wants to hit some tennis balls. And as the captain and number one, I get to play with Mr. Baird. And he tells me a story. He tells me that he has a son named Steve, who's coming to Bucknell the next year from Gunnery, who's a really good tennis player and a good baseball player.
Steve Baird. Yeah.
Steve Baird.
Yeah.
Yes. And that year, Bucknell's baseball team was in the toilet. I think they went 0-20. Of course, the next year they rebounded and got an NCAA bid, but our junior year, they were terrible. And I told Mr. Baird that he thought that Steve should really come and play tennis. So Steve came to, I don't know whether I helped. Played freshman tennis, and then as a sophomore, junior, senior, you guys there know he was like undefeated as number one. He was incredibly good.
Hall of Famer.
That's kind of like one of my favorite moments.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to turn it over to Tim Zelikovsky. He's a freshman from Toronto, Canada, and I think he has a question or two to ask. So Tim.
Yeah, I'd like to ask. I'll go around and asking this question, but Maurice, what advice would you give me about the college tennis experience at Bucknell?
So here's what I wrote, thinking about that question before this Zoom went on. You have to enjoy competitive tennis. You have to work hard to improve your game and never give up.
Good, thank you. Jay, what advice would you give?
Well, I would suggest that when the weather in the springtime is amenable, that you get out and start running to get in shape for tennis. I don't know what the situation is with indoor courts at Bucknell, but we certainly didn't have them when we were there. And so that was the approach I took. I tried to get in shape for the season, and then when it warmed up enough to play, we went out and hit the courts.
Yeah, we are lucky enough to utilize the indoor courts up in Williamsport because the weather never warms up in Lewisburg till like July. So.
Sam, what advice would you give?
Take golf. No, I'm kidding. Well, first of all, as far as indoor courts, I don't know, Dave, do you remember when Hank put us on the basketball court?
Yep.
Can you imagine playing tennis on a basketball court? You think of a fast surface. It was, you couldn't hit the ball. I mean, it was ridiculous. But I do agree with what Maurice was saying. Enjoy it. Take advantage of everything. Going to the different schools, really enjoying it. Try to improve your game. know that you're not going to be playing at Wimbledon unless things have changed. And look, I mean, I think Dave and I, you know, I played in the 35 and overs and whatever, and but just enjoy yourself. You know, take advantage of all the opportunities that Bucknell tennis has to offer, going to the different schools, meeting people, which I did. And I think what Maurice said was exactly how I feel.
Okay. David, what advice would you give?
Okay, I'm going to be a little long-winded here. My advice is appreciate what you have. And I'm going to put this in perspective because all the others of us understand this. When I came to Bucknell in September of '65, no student union, no field house, no Langone Center. The athletic facility was Davis Gym and the little annex behind it and the swimming pool. Across from the Bison, where there's a parking lot now, there were 6 green clay courts, a couple of hard courts, and then there were 9 blacktop courts, when I say hard courts, okay? We played 6 singles and then 3 doubles. You played your singles match. There was no such thing as no ad. We didn't have chairs. We didn't have coaches, no coaching. We got out there, we played. I don't even remember bringing water, except if it was a really hot day and you took an empty tennis ball can and put some ice and some water in it.
That's right.
You played your singles match, then you had 10 or 15 minutes break, and you played a 2 out of 3 full scoring doubles match.
So it's interesting to know that from 53 to the 69 class, it wasn't any different on the courts.
Right. Actually, after Jay graduated, the parking lot across from the Bison replaced those tennis courts, and they took the 9 hard courts and they actually painted green inside the lines. There was still blacktop macadam around the courts. Okay. Oh, and uniforms. Our uniforms were, we could go to the cage in the gym, get as many t-shirts, jocks, gym shorts, socks, gray sweatshirts and gray sweatpants. For matches, sometimes they gave us these fleece things that were cast offs from the swim team.
I don't remember any of that.
Oh, I remember it. Okay, so we basically wore our own clothes. Oh, they did give us one pair of Converse tennis shoes a year. No rackets, no strings, nothing. Okay. There wasn't that nice facility at Langone where you can train. I think the weight facility was in the bowels of the football stadium. I was there a couple of times, but it wasn't very appealing for tennis players. Didn't lift weights back then. We played. That's what we did, right, Jay? We ran and we played. That was
okay.
So Tim, appreciate what you have and enjoy.
Tim, I just got to tell you a funny story. Okay, so when I was a senior in high school, I lost in the finals of a city private school tournament to this guy named Ed Tarangioli.
I remember him.
You remember him? Okay. So I lost to him in the finals. Okay. Now fast forward senior year. Okay. And I guess he went to Georgetown. So now we're playing Georgetown. And the number 1 player there then was Wheeler Neff.
Right.
And Wheeler Neff
and me
went barefooted into the creek or something and cut his foot. Okay. He couldn't play. So everybody moved up 1. So Mark Posis, do you remember Dave, Mark Posis?
Yep.
Okay. So Mark Posis is now playing Ed Tarangioli. And I said to Mark, geez, this is afterwards. So Mark, we wound up playing and we beat Georgetown and we beat him pretty easily, I guess. And Mark comes to me and he says he beat Tarangioli. And before the match, Tarangioli said to him, did I play you back in the juniors, back, in high school? And Mark said to me, Yeah, he did. He killed me, but he didn't want to admit it. So he said to Tarangioli, "You must have played my cousin." And then, so 4 years later, whatever, 3 or 4, Mark plays him and beats him. But it just shows you how, people, progress, whatever. But it was such a funny story because she said, "Yeah, he killed me, in high school," but they wouldn't admit it. Anyhow, it's a funny story.
Yeah, well, you're bringing back, kind of to go astray. One of my first junior tennis tournaments as a 16-year-old was at the Brownsville Field Club. I knew Mark back then, and I'm playing Sidney Glass, who's one of the Glass brothers, two of the top juniors in the East. And I win the first set, and I'm up in the second set. And Mark comes over the defense and says, "How you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm winning." And Mark says, "Do you know who that is?" And the match was over. That's it was kind of like McEnroe at the French when he heard the camera. Gone. Yeah, Mark was very tough. Very, very tough ball player.
Yeah. Yep. So Tim, enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Take advantage of everything you can. Keep playing your tennis. Go to all the, hopefully COVID's going to be over and you can play. And to me, why do I contribute to Bucknell tennis? Because to me, that was one of the most important things about Bucknell. I'm sorry, the academics and everything else, but to me, the tennis, it gave me an opportunity to see other places and to and just enjoy myself and being camaraderie and being a competitive person that I was. It gave me an outlet to do everything. And I think it's very different now. When David and I were there, we had, what do we have? 4 guys from New York, right? We had the Wheeler was from Delaware. We had some other guys who dropped out, but now you got guys from Canada, from Europe, China, whatever it is, and it's great. It's a wonderful thing.
I can definitely relate to what you were saying about how tennis in general was important for you. Like the whole reason I came out to the United States for university anyways was to play collegiate level tennis. Like in Canada, we don't have those types, like that high level of sports. It's all club really. And yeah, that's like tennis is right now is, or playing college tennis is really important to me. So yeah, it's definitely some great advice. Thank you all. I have another question to ask all of you. What advice do you have about networking and finding the right job after Bucknell? Maurice, please.
So I was a pre-med major at Bucknell, and I got accepted to medical school at NYU. And therefore, the next 7 years were all mapped out for me. 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency. I took a year of fellowship. So it isn't quite the same thing as being in business. And so what I would say, sort of following up what my son did after we graduated Vanderbilt, you want to search out Bucknellians who may be in the corporate group that you're looking at as a job, whether it's your first job or any job after that, and at least talking with them, seeing what they like about the job and what they can do for you, if anything. But I would count on Bucknell as your network.
Thank you. Jay, what advice would you give?
Well, I don't know if you're interested in doing graduate work after your stint at Bucknell. The cost of a college education has increased so much since my day at Bucknell. As I recall, my mother got a $20,000 loan from Girard down in Philadelphia, and that pretty much covered the Bucknell education. My daughter went to the University of Miami, and that wouldn't have gone for one semester. So if you have the wherewithal, I would suggest that you pursue additional studies. I had a liberal arts degree in psychology, and I didn't want to pursue psychology any further, so I was drafted into the Army, and then when I got out, I had the GI Bill, so I could go to get an accounting degree, which was really set the course for my professional career.
Sam, what advice would you give?
Well, as far as networking is concerned, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, I would say, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I went to law school, then I got a Master's of Law degree, and I wanted to do something that would separate me from a lot of other people, and it really worked out. My two sons, one went to Duke, one went to Michigan. I had twin boys, and they went, their different ways. But I would say to you, take advantage of whoever you can, as far as the Bucknell network is, and see who's out there, see who's played tennis. Just talk to them, and go from there. But the main thing for you is try to make yourself a better candidate for for the world out there. That's all.
Thank you. David, what would you say?
Well, an interesting perspective, because I think to start off, you have to follow your dream. You have to establish what you want to be, and then get around people who have been successful at that. Sam and Jay and I had unique experience in that, my dream, even though I have a degree in political science from Bucknell, I wanted to get a master's in physical education and become a Bruce Myers or a Hank Peters, find some little red brick college somewhere and coach for the rest of my life. And I actually got into Columbia University and Springfield College. Unfortunately, in 1969, there was a little conflict going on in the other side of the pond, and they had a draft. And that year they took from 1 to 160 to be serving in the armed forces. If you had if you're 161 and above, you were scot-free. I was 113. So, we had a, zig and zag to do something meaningful. I taught disadvantaged kids because I wasn't interested in being in the rice paddies. So our perspective is a little different, but I've learned over the years that first you have to establish what you want to be, who you want to be, and then go find those people. And if they're within the Bucknell community, latch on to those people who are where you want to be.
Tim, if I can just say something, the advice I gave both my sons was, do what you want to do. Go for whatever you think is going to make you happy. And forgetting Bucknell, and I know this is not the point of this, but first go and look for what you want to really do, because you don't want to look back 20 years from now and say, I really should have, could have, whatever it is. Just go for your dream. That's what I told my boys, and that's what I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal it back from Tim. So we'll go around, and this can be relatively quick, but I'm curious to hear the answer to this. So who was the teammate you either admired or respected most during your time as a member of the Bucknell men's tennis team? So Maurice, thinking back.
Yes, it was Paul Remy Jr. He played #1 singles. He was a very good player, and he was an academic scholar, and a very nice guy.
Was he your class or
Yes,
a little bit
my
older?
class,
Okay.
53.
Great. Jay.
I think David and I hit it off the best.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But you were 2 years ahead of him?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Sam Ross.
Well, I don't think there there was nobody my year who I admired, except myself. But I would say that of all the players who I played with, I thought the best was Jay. I thought he was a level above everybody.
Wow. Outstanding. And David?
Well, I think that not only was Jay a great player, but he was an outstanding leader. And I'm always indebted to him for being the person I could vent to when I was going through that academic difficulty, as well as being a great partner. I mean, there were times during the summers that I would go camp at his house and we would train. I would sleep on a mattress on the floor, and we'd get up in the morning and go play at Nutley, play a couple hours at Nutley Tennis Club, come back, eat lunch, take a nap, and go back on the court to get better. So, I mean, Jay is the person that I look up to the most.
David, your class kind of bridged that gap from Jay, and then you kind of started like the Steve Baird, Alex Anderson. You were like kind of the
Jim Lackritz. I mean, after Sam and I graduated, then they got really good.
Really good.
The next year with Wheeler and Mark and Steve Baird and Jim Lackritz and Alex Anderson, who had an unbelievable record. He played 4 on the team that Sam and I, junior and senior year. They just were outstanding. They went undefeated a couple of years. They were great.
Yeah.
Alex played 5 and I played 4.
Was it?
And then senior year we switched.
Yeah.
Just want to make the record straight.
I mean, and Dave Raff played 6. He was a great athlete. He's passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave Raff was a phenomenal athlete.
Yes.
Dave Raff and I, for the most part, played doubles together. We played the singles, and then we played doubles. And what a great guy! What a phenomenal athlete! And then just a shame that he passed away so early. He was an All-American soccer player.
That's what I heard. Yep.
Yeah.
We had a good bunch of guys.
So my last question, and this will be interesting to hear, especially I want to hear from Maurice, because you've been in academia for such a long period of time. But what advice would you give me as the current men's tennis coach? It could be anything.
So recruit talented players who have a real passion for tennis. It should be their sport and maybe their only sport.
Yeah.
And they should have a passion for team play. Since we talked during the year and we corresponded this past year, I said some of the things in the exchanges of writing, but I enjoyed each occasion that we met and talked with each other. I just say the best advice is just be yourself. That seems to work for me.
No, I appreciate that. That's outstanding. And believe me, Tim can't do anything else but play tennis. He's terrible at basketball, and
That's true. I possess no other athletic abilities.
and he's the only Canadian that can't play ice hockey to stereotype. So he's got nothing but tennis. So we've got that. Jay, what would your advice to me? And you've given me tons over the past couple of years, and I appreciate it all. So,
Well, it's so different now with the international recruiting that goes on. I mean, recruiting is obviously a good part of the effort to get a good team together. And after that, I think most of the players that you're going to get are pretty well entrenched in their game. I think they may improve somewhat, but really their basic strokes are set. And just work with them on that basis.
it's funny because the difference between American kids and the international, and Tim actually, like American kids are more well-rounded. Like they hit the gym a lot and do a lot of off-court training. Like the internationals, like Tim's never seen the inside of a gym. He just hits tennis balls. So when they come to school, it's a lot of working in the gym and teaching them proper technique and how to get stronger and prevent injuries. With American kids, we do a little more technique work because they spend more time in the gym than on the court sometimes. So there's such a diverse training. So Sam Ross, advice for me.
Well, it is so different. I mean, when I was in high school, I played football, basketball, and tennis. I mean, tennis was, some of a side thing besides the others. I think what you're doing now is fantastic. I think you're recruiting, you're going all over the world, basically, is wonderful. And I think, you're emphasizing what the players can get coming to Bucknell with the education and everything else. I think whatever you're doing, just keep doing. I think it's wonderful.
Well, hopefully we can play and get a Patriot League title this season.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
That would be what I'm looking for. And the captain, David Gordon, what would be your advice?
Well, I've watched you guys play both at West Point and
yes,
at East Hartford against University of Connecticut. And I think you do a great job with the kids. I think that you have established a real sense of camaraderie amongst the kids. And I think that just keep, as the others have said, just keep doing what you're doing. Make it fun for them.
Awesome.
Keep it fun and light and let them enjoy their experience.
Well, we hope to see you. And Jay, if we ever get back, we were planning spring break this year was going to be in Florida, and I was going to make you come to a match, but they canceled our spring break. So we'll get you out. We'll drag you out. So
Okay.
So thanks so much, Todd.
All right, thanks, Coach. And first, in closing, I want to turn my comments to Tim. And Tim, thank you again for jumping on the call tonight. Wish you the best of luck. You got about 1 week left of the semester. It's been an unusual semester to say the least, and certainly as a first year, probably not the experience a first year wants to have in college. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that come this spring, you're on that court behind me and you're beating Patriot League opponents and kicking some butt. And we'll all be cheering for you if that is the case. So good luck with that. And to the guys that joined the call, thank you so much for taking the time tonight to be with us and share the stories and just to watch you talk about it and the enthusiasm you show. It makes me feel good that it brings back solid, strong memories for all of you. Thank you for what you did while you were here as members of the program and how you represented the school on the courts. And maybe more importantly, thank you for what you've done since you graduated for Bucknell and for the Bucknell tennis program. Our student athletes can't do the things that they do or perform the way they do without the support we get from our alumni. And I really appreciate all that you do there. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then for those of you that tuned in at home tonight to watch, thank you for doing so. And go Bison.